Okay, we call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, meeting of November 20th, 2019. First, we'll begin with our roll call. One member who's on the roll call agenda but is no longer a member of the board as of today is Ralph Lightstone. So we will make comments about Ralph shortly during our board members' reports. But calling the roll, the chair is present. Vice Chair Reeves?
Present.
Member Eng?
Present.
Member Allen?
Here.
So please show all four remaining members are present. Moving to item number 2, approval of the minutes of the October 16th, 2019 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
A second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of October 16. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Please show the minutes being adopted unanimously. Now we move to Chair's report. This meeting is being streamed, as will all of our meetings now henceforth be streamed. Again, the purpose of the streaming, and for those who may be watching, is really just transparency to let our other CUIAB staff members and judges around the state know what we're doing at these meetings, to also let employers or workers know what goes on in CUIAB meetings, or any member of the populace. Although the meetings are short, want viewers to be aware that most of the work that my board colleagues do is between meetings. In fact, since the last meeting, they have heard and resolved 968 appellate cases. So good work on behalf of my colleagues. 2 more issues. One, in the last meeting, those who were viewing will recall we talked a lot about timelines, and during CEO Gonzalez's report today, she'll talk about some efforts that have been made, some good efforts that have been made to try to change the direction, but she'll also talk about some obstacles that we are having. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, and our timeline measure from the Department of Labor is due in March. So hopefully by March we will be ahead of all of the Department of Labor guidelines. Lastly, I just want to mention that Ralph Lightstone has moved on to another board, and just want to let Ralph know, and other board members will comment too, that we will miss him and appreciate his service. With that, we move to board member reports. We'll start with my vice chair, Dan Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make some comments, brief comments about Mr. Lightstone, who I so enjoyed working with the permission of the chair, I wanted to express the condolences of this board and this entire institution for the recent passing of Susan Bloom, who was an ALJ for 27 years in our Bay Area office. She was a stalwart employee and outstanding judge for the state of California, and we were saddened to hear of her passing. And in addition to that, recently the 22-year-old son of our presiding judge in Oxnard, Mark Merowitz, tragically passed away. I wanted to express our condolences to our presiding judge, and to make sure that Mark knew that our prayers and condolences are with him and his family during this very tragic time. So after having said that, I will say that I had the great fortune of meeting Ralph 2 decades ago. I've worked with him in a number of different capacities. When he was at CRLA and then with the Brown administration. And it was an enormous pleasure to work very closely with him over the past roughly 12 months. And I'm sad to see him go, because he was sort of my conscience at times. He would constantly sort of tap my shoulder and say, hey, is that how you really want to rule? And so he reminded me of what's best about this job. And he's a role model that I will follow going forward. And I really appreciate the time and the input and the advice you've given me. So thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Dan, for those very thoughtful comments. Moving now to Member Eng.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to also join my colleague, Mr. Vice Chair, in condolences to the untimely passing of the son of the Oxnard presiding judge. I exchanged some condolences with him and got a response from him, and wanted to join you in saying that was something that affects the CUIAB family, and so therefore it affects all of us. I also wanted to add my comments on the Mr. Lightstone, who actually has joined us in the audience today, sitting on the other side of the dais, to say that it's been a great pleasure to have known him. We both came in at the same time as newbies, and I want to tell you his knowledge, his professionalism, his hard work. He was, every time I came, he was always had preceded me by at least 2 or 3 hours, and really, as Vice Chair Reeves said, is a role model for someone who's hardworking, professional. And even though I only met you personally recently, I've had other people who've worked with you who have also commented to me in the past about how lucky we were to have you. And I have to tell you that the ALRB is very fortunate to have someone of your caliber to join them. And congratulations on your daughter's passing of the California Bar, and congratulations of your joining the ALRB. And also, your family is very distinguished. I believe that your wife was the first Latina ever appointed to the Superior Court here in our region. And so all of the 3 of you are extremely outstanding, and we wish you well.
Thank you, Mike. Moving now to Michael Allen. Member Allen.
Yes, I think for all the board, we are saddened by the losses to the CIUB family, and our condolences go out to them. I also just want to comment that next week will be Thanksgiving, and it is a time of gratitude. I just wanted to express gratitude toward my fellow board members and the judges, the IT staff, clerical staff, support staff, everyone who makes this agency function at the high level that it does, and I wanted to thank them. And I'd also like to note that the fires are very much on my mind. A couple of years ago, we reported on the Tubbs fire, and at that time, we lost 5,000 homes in one night. The most recent fires in Northern California, we lost about 300 homes in one night. And then there are horrible fires in Southern California and throughout the state, wildfires. And I think it's a wonderful thing that we have the disaster unemployment benefits available to people. I know that in our area, many people were displaced by the power outages and the fire evacuations. And I can only imagine what a help it is to people when suddenly they lose their livelihood for a period of time, and we're there to help them. I think that's an extremely important thing that we do for everyone. And regarding Ralph, I guess I have not known Ralph for that long, but I have a real affinity for anybody who has a good sense of humor and who cares deeply about the work that we do. And Ralph is someone who, not only with his intellectual capacity, but he has a big heart, and I think that you need both to do a good job here. And I thank you for your service. Thank you.
Well, that concludes board members' reports, and at this point, Ralph, we want to just thank you. You're certainly excused to go if you wish. You're no longer a member. You're not getting paid for sitting here. But if you do want to comment, there is an opportunity coming up right now. Item number 6 is public comment. Do any members of the public wish to come forward and make a comment? Any members of the public wish to come forward? Seeing none, we will move to our report by our Executive Director, Chief ALJ, Judge Elena Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, board members. I will start with echoing the sentiments for the departure of Ralph Lightstone. I've known him for many years through his work with Labor Agency, and I found him as a board member to be quite easy to work with, to be very thoughtful. We engaged in legal discussions about certain issues, which was kind of fun to do, as usually that's reserved for the appellate operations and others. So Ralph engages with people, and he's interested in all different areas of law, and ALRB is very lucky to have him, and I will miss him. So, and I'm going to start with the security report, so I won't forget that. We had only one incident this month, there was a claimant that had been regularly calling and threatening employees in the Pasadena Office of Appeals as he wanted his hearing expedited. It had been set by phone, and he had not appeared, and he was obviously having some difficulties understanding what the process was. So after a number of contact with the office by phone, the advice was given to contact the Highway Patrol, which we've done in the past, and the Highway Patrol would make a visit to the person's home and have a discussion and see if there's any way they could ameliorate the situation. As it turned out, either the person decided not to answer the door, but the Highway Patrol wasn't yet able to make contact with the claimant, but there has not been a repeat of the phone calls as of now, so maybe just the visit itself. But in those situations, we do have the Highway Patrol hopefully available to us. So when the hearing is reset, the Highway Patrol will be asked to attend the hearing if it's in person. Or even if it's by phone, sometimes the person will appear in person when it's scheduled by phone. So in an abundance of caution, the office is going to have Highway Patrol in the office the day that the hearing is scheduled. So that was the security report there. The offices are told, and they do regularly contact Carl Vega, our security officer. So when there's a concern about how to handle the situation, they contact Carl Vega, and he assists them in making the contacts. All right, let's see a couple of, okay, got that done. So as to the report that the board chair mentioned I was going to give today, and it's a more positive report than last month. Last month, as you recall, we had not made the timeliness standards for the month of September, and there were questions about what October would look like. And as anticipated at that point during the meeting in October, we did not yet increase our timeliness numbers because we had just recently instituted a number of procedures to increase our timeliness, which I will go through. But for the year, which is what we are measured on annual year, we are continuing to make all of the numbers for the federal timeliness standards. We recently ran the month of November report, which you really won't get until the next meeting, but I just wanted to give you the good news that during that time, we did manage to make 45-day time lapse. We're at a higher percentage of that, and very close to making 30-day time lapse. So the measures that we put in place over the last 6 weeks have been productive. So we are on an upward swing with this. I think we got a handle on it early in the measurement period, and that we are feeling confident that if all things go as we have set in motion, that we will be successful at the end of the March 31st measurement period. One of the issues that I did want to bring up again, and when I asked you just have a mathematical equation of the loss of decisions we have per month because of the arbitration issue where we had to reduce the caseload before meeting and conferring on impact with the union to up it. We have lost approximately 1,400 decisions per month because of the arbitration decision. And that is obviously one of the major factors that has put us behind the 8 ball in making the timeliness.
Now, just to clarify, the arbitration decision is that we cannot add additional caseload to our existing judges without first meeting and conferring with the case. Is that what we're talking about?
That's correct. What had happened is, as a result of the contract 3 years ago, where the state was given the opportunity to set a caseload without any limitations, we had raised the caseload at that time, and the case arbitration decision was that we should have met and conferred despite the new contract that gave us that right, we believed. The arbitrator found that we had to meet and confer before raising the caseload. So the caseload was reduced, although we had been operating at the higher caseload for years with no apparent problems. We were required to reduce the caseload until we met and conferred with the union, which we are in the process of doing now, setting up the meet and confer And once that takes place, we will implement the higher caseload. But
And because of that limitation, that's why we're hearing about 1,400 fewer cases a month?
correct. Had we not had that decision, we would be producing 1,400 more cases per month.
Okay, thank you.
So as a result of that, we did start the hiring after, or, we're in the process of it, and we now have 3 ALJs that are returnees to CUIAB who worked at other agencies. They will be beginning in the first 2 weeks of December. There are 3. There are 2 more that offers are outstanding to them, and we hope to hear from them by the end of this week. And we have a number of interviews that are scheduled for those that either would be new to CUIAB or left here years ago. So we're going to put them through the interview process. But as of now, it looks as though we'll have 5 people in the next month beginning experienced ALJ2s. So they will be able to handle all the cases at the highest caseload that we're able to calendar at this point. We also have a retired annuitants, Dan Garcia, who retired, it just seemed like yesterday, as a Sacramento Office of Appeals presiding judge. He has been gone 6 months, so he is now able to come back as a retired annuitant, and he is working, Dan Garcia is working downstairs, and he's happy to be back. I guess after 6 months of not working, he's happy to be here. We have 2 more ALJs that were retired, one downstairs, Marilyn Tays, and another one, James Karras in the Inland office, who's decided to, return as a retired annuitant. So we've added those to the pool. Let's see what else. We did have we had a session scheduled for the meeting for today, but it was canceled at the last minute. So we are now in the process of trying to set up something in the next week to 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Sam has, working with Kim Hickox and Ralph Hilton, has basically left every date available between now and January 1st available, open to meet and confer with the unions. So we have made ourselves available to have that meeting. Let's see. Mass calendars have been required for the field. Each office is conducting 1 or 2 mass calendars per month. This captures extra cases. We monitor how many they're doing, and we encourage them. Well, actually, I don't encourage them. I direct them to do these mass calendars, so we capture extra work. It does create sometimes, when you have hundreds of cases that have to be heard in a shorter period of time, in terms of staffing, in terms of people's efforts, it's a lot more energy used for that process. But I think that it's been successful in getting some of the older cases out, and so that we will not have a backlog. The tendency sometimes is to do the newer ones and forget the older ones, which is, again, I'm repeating from last month, but that is not the way we want to handle it. We want to get the cases in and out the door as quickly as possible. So the other thing that we created was the Workload Management Committee, which is Jody Remke and Lori Kurosaka, Ralph Hilton, and Michael Kutry, the PJ of San Diego, and Hugh Harrison, the Assistant Chief, to work on where the cases are coming in, rather than wait for them to age in one office and then transfer them to another office when they get too old, is to know this office is understaffed. We'll immediately transfer the case when they get in the door to be registered and heard in that second office, so that they're moving more quickly. Instead of a 30-day case going to another office, it will be a 7-day case. So they have the opportunity. And one of the things that I've encouraged the field offices about is that this is a statewide impact. I know, as everyone as a manager somewhere knows, that when it's your shop, you want to make sure it does well. And when the board sees reports and says, oh, this office is falling behind and this one is doing well, then the offices feel somewhat competitive to say, hey, I'm doing well, I'm meeting all the numbers. So what we're forcing the offices that are doing well is to take some of their work, to give them work, older work from other, and they're kind of, admittedly legitimate to say, well, my numbers will fall. And, and I reiterated last week in a call to them that this is a statewide operation. This is not, it's nice to be regional to some extent so we can measure success. On the other hand, if your fellow office needs help, that it will be moved around. And so they understand that. So if you get reports now and you might see an office that looks like it was doing very well and not so well now, you'll, maybe understand that the reason we're doing that is just to make sure offices have equal number of cases, and sometimes an office has better staff at doing certain things, and so we're moving them around. So the reports will look a little different. We're doing it on a weekly basis and evaluating. For example, we're having 2 ALJs starting in Sacramento in early December, so they may not have the same need to transfer their cases out as they had last month. So it's a committee that's working weekly to make sure that our workload transfers reflect where the work is in the state. So that's been really successful. Another matter that, we reinforced is the plugging of cases. For example, if someone withdraws a case and says, oh, I won't be there, I got another job, or for whatever reason they are, and they withdraw, and a party, an ALJ has 3 or 4 spots open tomorrow or a couple days from now, what we've been doing is we call and ask the party to waive notice if they will do that, and we set them into that slot. So we don't lose that time, and then at the hearing, the party will, be asked to reinforce that they waived the appropriate notice. So in that way, we're capturing work. Another more draconian measure that we took was to limit vacations for the ALJs and the presiding judges for the holiday period, because in the past, when people want vacation and they have it on the books, it's generally granted. But given the number of vacations that are already coming up in November, December, and the number of ALJ days that are off calendar now, we concluded that for operational purposes, we couldn't continue to grant 2 and 3 weeks or days off until we caught up with the work and we didn't get into a backlog situation. So as you can imagine, it's not the most popular decision to make. And we're obviously working with folks that have, each presiding judge is in charge of their own office to try to work with people. Many of the presiding judges have given back vacation time that they had already put in for, and that I had approved, but that they, I asked them if they could consider not taking those time, not as much time off. So instead of taking an entire week off, take a day or 2 off. So that's what's going on. We're trying to capture work wherever we can, as much as we can, to make up for our inability to fully calendar the ALJs. The other good thing that is coming up is the appellate judges, what was it called, the transfer program, or the program that Jody was working on,
Rotating into the field?
Thank you, rotating program, not transfer program. The rotation from the appellate operations into the field is going very well, because there aren't as many cases in the appellate department right now, and it's working well. Becky is working with them and training those in the field who have not been in the field before. So that process is working very well, and they're helping out quite a bit, and the field is appreciating very much the help of the appellate judges in the field. And the presiding judges have also been directed to hear cases when they're not otherwise busy in the office, and to hear cases when an ALJ calls in sick or is falling behind, or for whatever other reasons, to calendar themselves for calendars. So we took an aggressive approach towards this problem. We feel confident everybody is on board with it, and I believe that the numbers will continue to improve as we get closer to the end of the measurement period. Okay, let's see. And one other thing I wanted to announce, the absence of Rob Silva. Rob is right now at the Sacramento State Leadership in Government program. It's a managerial program that Jody is currently involved in, a different executive level management program. And so Rob, I discussed it with the chair, and Rob was excused for today because the program only has 12 sessions, and they're all mandatory to get the certification for the leadership program. So that's where he is today. We also have coming up applications for the spring semester of this program. We've been trying to rotate all of the presiding judges through that program, And I believe that Mark Merowitz and Mike Price that will be attending the spring semester of a leadership program here in Sacramento. And it's Jody Remke and John Martin are attending with Rob Silva this semester. So what we're trying to do is get all of the managers to go through the Sacramento State Leadership Program. So they've all learned different skills from that program, and it's been a positive event. The Lean Sigma Yellow Belt training, the third cohort for CUIB specific, will be held December 3rd through the 6th. It's at the CalHR campus in Rancho Cordova. There's training sessions. So at the end of that, all of the managers at CUIB will have been trained in that Yellow Belt program. Let's see, yesterday, Lori Kurosaka attended Labor Agency's kickoff legislative session. It was a meeting of all of the folks at Labor Agency put on by the secretary to discuss legislation that will be, how they're going to handle legislation with this new administration. Lastly, the power outages did impact, I just wanted to go back to how managing field offices is done. For example, when there were power outages in Concord, or when they would be in Santa Rosa or different offices in both Southern and Northern California during the fires over the last month, the presiding judges took efforts to transfer all the cases and make them into phone hearings rather than lose the cases and have the people wait longer, the parties wait longer. They had them heard by phone. So, it took a lot of management during that time because we wouldn't know until a day before that an outstation or a facility would be closed or there would be smoke and so on. So efforts were made to keep the cases as phone hearings if we could. So we, the managers of the offices, both in Southern and Northern California, were very effective in keeping the work going. And lastly, I wanted to introduce Seek Run, who is taking Janet McGlinty's place as our business intelligence manager. Seek is here. Seek Run, this is Seek Run. She's been training with Janet McGlinty for the last month, and sadly, Janet's last day will be mid-December. She is retiring, and we will miss her tremendously, but I think that she's very happy to retire, as most folks are, and so she's looking forward to it. And that is my reports.
Well, Lane, I want to really thank you and all the folks in the field offices who may be watching for all the initiatives that have been taken in the last couple of months to improve our timeliness at the field. Due to circumstances, as you mentioned, beyond our control, we started to fall behind, and we've got to remember that the timeliness issues aren't only important because the Department of Labor is monitoring us and we need to keep them happy, but also primarily because we have folks who should be getting employment and need it to get by who aren't getting it when we delay. And certainly it's not purposeful, our delay, but it's been very purposeful, your plans of making us more speedy in terms of getting to those hearings. So thank you for that. And with that, I'll ask any other members if they have comments or questions for CEO Gonzalez.
Thank you for the report and the outline of the steps you've taken since our last board meeting. We started to alert the board that we were trending the wrong direction. I noticed that between last month and this month that we had our caseload actually jumped approximately 2,500 cases, and that the percentage of cases closed within 30 days has gone from 64.8% last month to 62.6% this month. Do you expect all the steps that you've taken to arrest that, if it's hopefully not a trend, that because it seems like before the end of this calendar year, we'd be under that DOL benchmark of 60%. Do you feel confident the steps you've taken in the past 30 days have arrested that trend and can get us back going towards 60% and above?
I do. I feel confident that given the report so far in November, which isn't in your packet yet packets yet, because that will be for next month, that we have arrested that decline in timeliness, and that because for the month of 3 weeks of, it's not 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks of November so far, we are at almost 90, for November, 94% for 45-day time lapse, and closer to, pardon me?
That's 90 days.
I'm sorry, 70, yeah, I'm looking, somebody put a chart sideways. More in the 80%, which is certainly in a trend that is going towards decreasing the time it's taking to process the work. And the same thing with the 30-day, we're getting closer to the mark of, we're at about 50. This is a weekly report, so it's a little hard to digest it
Okay,
all
so
like I have.
since you have weekly reports in front of you, do you anticipate the trend of substantially increasing cases being open to continue? Because we went from roughly 15,000 cases in September to 17,500 cases in October. And you've taken a number of steps to reverse the trend, but I don't know how we can continue to manage if the workload keeps skyrocketing in that manner. So since this report has been issued, do we have a sense for whether that is plateauing, or is it continuing to go up? Because that would mean that we'd have to take additional steps above and beyond what we've already, or what you've already done.
I'm not sure there are many additional steps that we
Can
can
take.
take at this point. The meet and confer is really, in getting the ability to calendar appropriate number of cases is probably our best hope to comply with the standards. I think that that the steps we've taken, our goal is that they would be sufficient to offset the cases that we're losing, or at least keep even. Anticipating what the workload is going to look like is something that, the EDD work groups do. When we get our budget set, when we have discussions with EDD, they talk about, what their forecasts are. They have a department that works, that's what their jobs are, to find out what the work is looking like. And they convey that to us, and then our, budget revisions reflect that.
See, our budget revisions were we were downsized essentially. It's good that we've added 5 ALJs, I assume from attrition. So I guess I have a question now on the limiting of vacations, which is a good idea. I know it's probably not very popular, but given the circumstances, I don't think we have any other option. For a limited window of time, I guess might be a question for Mark. Under our contract, how long could we do that technically? Limit vacations?
Well, I think Member Reeves,
I mean, we're asking them to defer. We're not saying they can't take vacations, just defer.
the provisions of the memorandum of understanding with Unit 2 general, and the other unions provide generally that requests to use leave time vacation shall not be unreasonably denied. So I think that's just something that we would have to evaluate based on operational needs and the request.
Okay. And I have one final question. Maybe this is for Mark. When did we put out the request to meet and confer with our labor union colleagues?
We provided the notice of the intent to increase caseloads at the end of September, so September.
So they've got that notice 2 months ago. Have they accepted a date to sit down and to start that conversation?
Unfortunately, as Chief Gonzalez discussed earlier, we've had a series of communications with both CASE and the California Department of Human Resources to coordinate those dates. We did have a date set for today, and due to unavailability of Cal HR's labor representative, that date was continued. I'm now working with CASE directly to schedule a meet and confer session. Cal HR has delegated authority to the board to conduct these meet and confer sessions without the participation in these sessions of Cal HR.
I appreciate it. And I hope we won't let Cal HR slow us down, because it seems like this needs to get wrapped up as quickly as possible, given the circumstances. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. My understanding is until this recent concession by CalHR to let us go it alone, we really had no choice. But if CalHR was slowing us down, they were slowing us down. That's, I think I can say, and I've been in frequent communication with staff, that we have been very conscientious about trying to get dates, and Case and CalHR have been equally conscientious about frustrating our efforts. And if the board would like just a summary, a one-page just list of dates and communications, and I'm sure we can have that provided to you. Let's not ask for that right now, but let's. Any other questions or comments for CEO Gonzalez? Mike?
So at the last board meeting, I requested to find out how many vacancies we had with ALJ2s, and I got a response through email that we had 12 vacancies. I'm hearing that we have hired 5. So is my math right? Is that we have still 7 more that we can hire?
We advertised for 10 positions.
Okay.
We like to leave some positions open in the event, which has happened in the past, the workload declines. We don't want to fully staff and then not have the money. So, I mean, there's just at this point, a couple of positions that out of the 12, we have 10 posted positions.
Okay. So that's why I'm asking, because I don't want to make assumptions, and you're clarifying for me.
There's 10.
Yeah,
There will be
but the
10.
other thing I realized after I asked this question at the last meeting and got my answer is that I wanted to know what is the total number of vacancies we have in the whole department, because I realized that everybody in the department depends on others to get the workflow done. It's just not our judges. We also have other people who provide support to the judges and a variety of tasks. So I was curious, what are the total number of vacancies we have in the department right now?
That would be something, since Rob is not here today, Rob in his shop monitor the staff positions and the overall vacancies, and as I sit here, I would be just guessing.
No, fair enough, but could you maybe send it out to, if the other board members are interested, maybe send that information to us?
What specific question?
Just regarding the total number of vacancies and on what positions in the agency, just so that we get an idea, because, you know, I'm trying to understand this, and please do not take these questions wrong. I think you're doing everything under the sun trying to move this forward and correct the trends. But I just would like to kind of have, as a board member, an idea of, you know, I'm just making this up, but if we were really low on clerk typists or areas where cases get transmitted electronically, whatever, I'd just like to have a feel, because we're just not responsible for the judges. We're responsible for the entire agency and workforce. So that's why I want the information.
Oh, no, and I can get that. I mean, I can get Rob to get that information to you. At this point, you know, filling behind typists is a case-by-case thing. If a typist or an office technician in a particular office leaves, they make a request to refill that position. Sometimes they don't make a request because they don't need it, and the management doesn't even make the request. And so based on that, we will, or, you know, won't approve that to go forward. So as to the total number, though, I'll find out. I think it was probably in the last budget presentation, but it escapes me how many are. So when Rob gets back Monday.
Yeah, it's kind of like the kind of thing, for lack of a nail, a horseshoe was lost, and then the
Right,
consequences
no.
that followed. So,
And at this point, I mean, the major, you know, we are actually processing the work. The offices are able to calendar, to register, to type. We're not behind in any of those other areas. The only area that we have a problem with is producing enough cases, and that's ALJ.
yeah.
So-
No, and I really appreciate it. And you know, I'd just like to echo what some of the other board members have said, is that to me, it is a real sacrifice for people to have their vacations cut down or reduced over the holidays. You know, vacations are important to folks, but it's an entire agency, and we have a mandate that we have to meet. So I just would like to express my appreciation to folks, because I know it's not an easy time, and we're just trying to catch up our caseload. And then hopefully, once we get this caught up, then people will be able to enjoy the vacations they've earned. So I'm sure the other board members feel the same way as I do.
And one thing I did want to say, that, and I did do it with the fires and other things, the presiding judges have really stepped up. I mean, after, you know, they realized that the dilemma that we were in, I feel like they have been going over and above in the offices. We've had regular phone meetings, regular contact about how, you know, to address these issues and not let it go so long. So the presiding judges have worked very hard with this. And just to address one of the questions that Member Reeves asked, Mark Wissam responded to, but to say we have been diligent, probably overly persistent, or I even used the word to Mark, nagging is even okay in terms of trying to get scheduled and meeting confer that we wanted to get scheduled. And in fact, when this was the date that we were given, it was a board meeting day, which was obviously wouldn't be handy to have both Kim Hickox and Mark Wissam gone on a board meeting day, but we, determined that was more important to get this going and that they would able to attend that day. So we've made ourselves available, and when we were notified at the end of last week that we could not go forward today is when Mark and Ralph Hilton and Kim Hickox and we discussed asking for delegation from CalHR. So you have to ask CalHR, and they've actually never given it to us before. I wrote a rather a strong request to CalHR that they allow us to meet and confer without their presence. We are, of course, in contact with them. We get approved what we do. The delegation documents Mark prepared on Friday and got over to them what we are agreeing to do as a result of the delegation. So we've been very, very diligent in trying to get this to move forward, all staff, so.
I just want to comment, and I have no problem with staff providing a list of vacancies throughout the agency, but it is clearly not clerk typists and other administrative professionals who are slowing things down. It is clearly the result of the arbitration decision that limits the number of cases that we can assign to field ALJs. And to look at any other employees, I think, in a way, hides that important fact. It is solely, we would not be in this problem if it weren't for the 1,400 cases a month that we're losing because of the arbitration decision. And that's why it's critical that we get Case to meet with us and that we get to do that meet and confer. Okay, thank you all. We will move on now to our next report, and that is from our Chief Appellate Operations Judge, Jody Remke.
Good afternoon, board members and chair. Again, the board has done an outstanding job in meeting the DOL guidelines and standards, and we continue to exceed the requirements with cases closed in 45 days or less at 91.8%, and cases closed 75 days or less at 97.5%. Average pending case aging is 17.1, and the standard being under 40 days. So again, that's a result of the board appeals being lower on average than normal, as we've discussed. There was a slight increase in cases, UI cases opened this past month. It was the highest since February of 2000 this year, but that was still only at 899. So again, it's somewhat of a mystery with the FO cases increasing and not a comparison increase. But again, it's fortunate for us that we can stay on top of it at the board level, and in addition, as Chief Gonzalez mentioned, have some of the ALJs rotate to the field to help out. So we're kind of at that good spot right now in AO, and we will just continue to monitor the case aging and pendency to make sure that we don't get behind. But again, we have a lot of leeway right now. Any questions?
Thank you, Jody. Any questions or comments for Jody Remke?
I have a question.
Go.
Judge Remke, with the rotation system that you have that was mentioned previously, do the judges have to travel very far, or is it mainly just here in the Sacramento office?
It's just here at the Sacramento office, so it's the same distance they would travel to come to work now.
That's what I was wondering, as
Yeah.
they required additional travel. Thank you.
Okay.
And just a comment, I think might have been said last meeting, but just to highlight, part of the reason you could assume for the reduction in cases at the appellate level, even though there's an increase at the field level, is that our field level judges are doing a better job. And better job being making better decisions or treating the people, the parties before them in a better way so they feel more comfortable with the decisions made and don't appeal. So that thank you goes out to the field judges and to appellate judges who, Jody commented the board's done a great job, and the board's job is largely facilitated by our appellate judges. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on now to a report by Jeff Wilby, our Chief Information Officer.
Thank you, Chair Block, board members. Just a brief update this month. We are closing out stage 2 of 4 of the project approval lifecycle with our partners at the Department of Technology, putting together detailed requirements for a new modern system. We've also been working in parallel of stage 2, which is an alternatives analysis and market research phase, to get our stage 3 work done, which are very detailed requirements that we can then give to a vendor. So our hope is that we can speed through the next couple of stages, and we're looking forward to engaging a vendor in the spring who will be here to actually get the work done.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any questions or comments for Jeff? Seeing none, this is where Rob would normally report. As you can see, he's not here, but if you do have any questions that you had for Rob, now's the time maybe to ask them to Elena, and she can get you a written or telephonic response from Rob. Anybody have anything they'd like to have?
Well, I would like to report that Rob did send me the MOU between CUIB and EDD. It was essentially, it was edifying from this standpoint that in the attachment A is much bigger than the entire contract. And it just kind of shows the cooperation that's needed between the agencies to make sure that everything moves smoothly. And it was actually kind of appreciated because it was kind of a behind the scenes look at all the bureaucratic, and I'm saying that in the positive sense, things that have to be done to have an agency move smoothly. So it was appreciated, and so I'm bringing this up because I did read it because I was interested, and it was instructive. So thank you.
That brings up another issue. In terms of board members' requests for reports or documents, if they're during a meeting, that's fine. We all have notice of it. If you have a report you want to request from an individual employee, it should really go initially through the chair and the CEO, and then to that employee, just so Elena in particular can keep a kind of oversight in the whole process. And if there are multiple requests from different board members, they don't have to all go to different people. So let's just, in the future, try to go through the chair or notify the chair and go through Elena's office to get those reports. Anything else for today's open session? I don't believe we have any closed session items. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
And nothing else for open session? In that case, I want to thank you all for your time and attention, and this meeting is adjourned.